Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Irish Food Trade Connect conversations. I'm delighted to have Darren Harris with us today. Darren, you're very welcome to the conversations today.
Thanks very much, Margaret. It's a real privilege to be here, and I'm looking forward to having the chats with you today and hopefully sharing some helpful information.
Yeah, we know each other a bit now, going back to last year. To be fair to you, you were a great supporter of the forum from the get-go, and I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. So it's absolutely fabulous to have you here today.
Yeah, no,
So
it's
listen,
great.
I'm going to ask you first of all. What tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, they kind of broke the mold with me. Historically, in the past life, I would have been a chef and a baker, but it was a bit more scientific than maybe your artistic, creative type chefs, and that's not taken away from. I love what they do, but it's a big life, and there's loads of opportunities out there. I was always into the science, the nuts and bolts, and how stuff worked. So I worked in fine dining for a couple of years. Enjoyed it, but it wasn't quite for me. An opportunity came up in relation to doing a bakery course part time. Absolutely loved it. So I have to give context. I was in the food industry for about 15, 16 years as a chef, and I would have worked in Michelin stars, fancy hotels, all that kind of stuff. And an opportunity came up to do a bakery and pastry arts degree, and I loved it. I absolutely loved the fact you could scale up and process, and it could explain everything. And I had completed that course, and it was suggested to me at the time to go off and do a master's in culinary innovation and product development. And it was a brand new course, and it blew me out of the water because it just raised my awareness of where the whole food industry could go. But when I got my qualification, I found myself overqualified. I was a chef who had a baker's qualification, or a baker had a chef's qualification and a master's, and the industry just didn't know what to do with me. And I went back to agency chef at the time, but was doing a little bit of consulting. And an opportunity came up with Arista Cuisine de France, my former employer, and I had some very great and positive experiences there. But my direct line manager would have left maybe 6 months into me starting the role, and then suddenly I was in charge of this 180 million euro greenfield site doing all the R&D. So it was a real baptism of
Wow.
fire. And I stood it. My chef credentials don't leave until the last customer's been fed and fed well. That stood to me. I was grinding, I was doing a lot of hard work, but I learnt loads. And as a consequence of that, then about three and a half years later, an opportunity came up in TU Dublin, which is where I lecture. So if anybody doesn't know TU Dublin, it's the old Cathal Brew, sorry, the new Cathal Brew Street, and it's based out in Grange Gorman, so Technological University Dublin. I'm delighted to be one of the bakery lecturers out there. It's a fantastic team, not just in the bakery, but across all the different disciplines. And what I specialize in now is kind of product development, reformulation, the science behind why things work or why they don't work. And I try to specialize in industry engagement, to be valuable to industry, because that's my strength and what gets me kind of jazzed about my job. So I try to always be on top of new trends, reaching out to people, being a connector in industry. I think it's critically important. I could go on, but I think that's probably enough to kind of set the scene for your participants today, Margaret, if that's okay.
Yeah, Darren, so there's a breadth of it was something you said there about the job isn't done until the last customer is
Yeah,
served. I mean, that is that is really the crux of running any business, isn't
yeah,
it? I mean, and to say that has stayed with you all these years, isn't it funny? Because like your background is so it's basically that chef creative into nearly a high level of manufacturing, which not
yeah,
everyone in that kind of side of it has. So you get both sides of it from an industry perspective, both the actual creative chef led or the baker's led into running a huge operation
yes,
on an
yeah,
R&D site,
yeah.
which is like I mean, they must be delighted in TU Dublin to have you, I would say.
On a good day, I can drive everybody else mad now with the best of them. But we all have our quirks.
Mm.
But look, there's some fantastic people there, and there's some people there who are fantastic. Cake decorators and artists. In relation to what to do. There's something for everybody in the food industry if you know where to sort of carve your niche. So I'm privileged to have found something that I can resonate with. So yeah,
And the education, because I'm a big believer in education myself, and
yeah,
like I lecture a day a week and I love it. like I mean, it doesn't feel like work. It because you're giving back. And sometimes I know my own self, I find that things that are normal in my head that I think would be no use to someone else. If you 30 or 40 students sit in front of you that don't know anything about this, and at the end of the term, you see that you've actually been able to teach them.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. Is that why you got into education or what made you go into education?
Oh, that's a great question. I suppose I always had a great respect for my lecturers. You know, I just knew that they really knew what they were doing. And some of the lecturers who were my peers, sorry, who were my lecturers back then are my colleagues now, right? So I have the privilege of working with these guys in a different setting, right? So anyway, so thank God we all got on then and now anyway, because you never know where life is going to bring you.
You don't.
But no, you really don't. I suppose I love sharing ideas. You know, I love being that sort of person who can kind of bounce ideas and a bit of a contrarian. Have you thought about this? Could we do it this way? If somebody tells you you can't do something because that's the tried and tested way of doing something, my brain will nearly be working overtime to come up with a different way of doing things. All right. And I suppose
Mhm.
academia can be good for that sometimes, especially with the food industry, because you're looking at something very tangible, you know. And that's the kind of the draw for me is the sharing of ideas, being trusted enough as an academic, because you have to be practical as well. But I suppose food industry academics, they have the contacts, they have the means, they're trusted to actually sort of be almost like a third space between lecturing and industry and nearly government in a sense, that you
Mhm.
can kind of come and connect the dots and somebody will pick up the phone to you and say, look, do you know how to do this? Or do you know somebody can help me? Or, you know, like maybe you know where I can get a good deal on an ingredient or whatever, you know, and it's just about connecting. Like you don't have a financial twist out of it. But I like that. I really have a passion for that kind of element to be a facilitator, you know, a trusted facilitator. I think it's a very privileged space to be in, and it just it's fun, you know. To me, it's a lot of fun, as you alluded to yourself, Margaret. You know,
Yeah, I think being that trusted person
yeah,
that people and you've introduced me to many people and they've been nothing but highly respectful of the experience you bring, the support that you would bring to their businesses, um, as a trusted advisor, like, and to have that in your space, to say you're a trusted person, that people believe in your experience and that you genuinely want to help them.
yeah.
And that's the space you come from. Because you genuinely want to help with the experience that you have, both academically and in industry. So it's a credit to you, to be fair.
Well, thanks very much. But it's great. This is actually recognized by the university these days. It's kind of called action research. You know that you're
Hmm.
going out and you're making yourself relevant. So, you know, it's part of my job. It'd be a bit like, and I mean this with a high respect. It'd be a bit like thanking a taxi driver at the end of the night, or the bus driver for the safe journey home. Like they're very grateful, right? But it's
Yeah,
what's expected of them, right? And I
yeah.
like to do what's expected of me and do a bit more. So, you know, like that's it comes with the territory, you know, and it's keeping me away from a PhD at the moment anyway. So
Oh,
I'm
here.
grateful for that. Yeah.
Well, that's a big undertaking.
Yes.
But now
Yeah.
that you've said it,
Oh,
now you could be setting the seed here.
yeah.
So we'll watch this space. We will. Listen, what do you tell me are the biggest obstacles in R&D at the moment in the food industry?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. I suppose just by virtue of giving, I need to give a bit of context here. Being the food person who knows how to design the food product, the lecturer who knows how to technically explain it, the person who would have been on revenue's technical advisor list to do an investigation if called upon, and somebody has written R&D tax credits as a ghostwriter. There's a couple of things, right? One is the
Hmm.
technical skills to actually write a technical report, right? Because we're all really busy, right? That's the first thing. That the language that actually needs to go in is the important thing. Another thing, and I could talk about this all day, another thing is actually just business structures, right? Because when you do R&D, you're going to have errors, you're going to have mistakes. Nobody wants a mistake associated with their department because it's the cost, right? So it's the strategy piece. It's actually locking horns in a room to say, okay, we're going to do something new. What resources are you going to need? What does good look like? What does bad look like? Do we, you know, is have we planned for this in somebody's job description? Because you know your job descriptions are probably 3 4 years out of date at the very least, right? and nobody's KPIs are associated with the new thing. So, it's really important to just actually take a step back and look around the project before you actually commence it. Because if you don't actually plan for that, you're going to actually find yourself in a scenario where you can have a bit of human nature infighting, or the separation of abdication of responsibilities, just because we haven't planned for it you know and so
Mm,
so it's the technical piece, it's training, it's facilitation, it's being aware of what R&D actually is. And I know we're going to come back to this, Margaret, as well, but it's always the human element, like because fundamentally, your business is going to run to a certain degree, but like everything, a lot of life is political, how you engage with people, and treating people with respect even under challenging scenarios. So, and being mindful, just really quick, actually, one point: the better your R&D person is, or the more competent your person is, the more work you're going to throw at them, right? And because, using the analogy you used earlier on in relation to the last chef standing, you don't want to leave your work. They're very passionate about it. They take great pride in being the Mr. and Mrs. Fix It. I know I was that soldier, but eventually they get burnout unless they're properly resourced. Okay. And when that person goes, you might have a knowledge brain drain, or you might actually just have apathy around new product launches, So there's a whole, you could write a book. You really could write a book about all
yeah.
this kind of stuff. So, but there's a big win, there's a big plus side as well if it's properly planned for.
Do you think that many businesses don't have a proper process? Because there is a process that you mentioned numerous steps there.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's pieces there that they wouldn't be the first things that have come to mind. And the skill set of those processes. So take us through the processes of some of what you've mentioned there, their importance. Because the
Yeah.
process, I think sometimes it's not the same. Maybe a lot of businesses don't know what that process should be.
Yeah. Um, so first of all, like if you're about to commence any project, you need to think about your resources, and you need to put about funding as part of that, right? But most businesses mightn't actually have a funding strategy. The person who might actually write a grant application or an R&D piece is probably going to be your technical person, and they're already maxed out. They're already totally constrained, right? So that's your first constriction. That's your first logjam. Most business, and I'll talk around the steps of R&D if that's okay, because I think
Hmm.
it'll be very
Brilliant.
meaningful to your listeners and people who are on the call. The people who are really interested, sorry, most businesses are doing R&D, but they don't actually realize it, and they're capturing it as technical documents. They're capturing it as product specifications. This is all new knowledge, right? That didn't exist beforehand, and it could be proactive. You're going off to do a trial. Reactive, your competitors have launched a product. Retrospective, you've got a problem that you need to fix, or something else, right? And because R&D falls into all these different angles, it can sometimes be hard to quantify, right? Like, okay, that's R&D and that isn't, right? But what you
Mhm.
can talk about is what revenue like to call the competent professional test, okay? And that's somebody with some kind of qualification, professional industry, recognized, or time served in an industry, that they actually would be people who would have the skills and how to write a technical report, or, run a department without fear of legal loss of reputation. Okay. So that's the competent professional piece. Like there's a lot of processes around that. The point, the problem, not the problem, the issues is that R&D, they're like the hub of the wheel in relation to new product development. You're talking to technical, you're talking to sales, you're talking to marketing, you're talking to the operations people, you're probably talking to the owner of business if it's a mid-sized company regularly, right? And a lot of your work can sometimes get blurred between everybody else's imminent tasks, immediate tasks. And so by actually taking a step back, even now, I'd actually suggest this needs to take place outside the business, probably on a Saturday as a once off. You get everybody out of the business when you can't get those phone calls where everything's an emergency. And you say, okay, if we could plan this from the beginning again, with all our processes as they are, right? How would we capture this in a kind of a stage gate process? But it's not a stage gate product development process. It's data capture in relation to applying for a grant or applying for R&D. Like, you get information from your supermarkets or your buyers. They say to you, we want a low salt, a low sodium, high fiber product. That's a product brief. Yeah. Okay. And now you have to adapt to that. So that's like a challenge, right? Can we make it? Can we make it using our equipment? Because your equipment is nearly like a signature. It's as much a signature of your product as the ingredients that go in it, right? And if your raw material supplier or your equipment supplier can't tell you how to do that, right? You're probably in the realm of R&D. It's a very slight perceptional flip in what you're doing, right? That to actually get people out of themselves to realize if there was somebody else who came in to do my job, would they have to do the same processes to get a product out the other side? And if that is the case,
Yeah.
then you probably are doing R&D, but you're too close to it. This is the common issue I see. People are too close to it, and they actually haven't given themselves time to take a step back, look at it again and go, good God, this is new knowledge. This is highly valuable. We could actually sell this as new IP to our competitor down the road. This didn't exist and would not exist unless we we're doing trials. Was there an element of risk involved? That could be financial, not like marketing risk or commercial risk. I'm actually talking about resources put into it. We're not quite sure what we're going to get out, and we had to put our best people on the project. That's kind of showing you that it was R&D, and it's, every business is a little bit different. So, I don't want to kind of like, if I start going too fine into it, Margaret, I could
Yeah.
end up eliminating one type of manufacturer over another. Like all this is generally kind of teased out over a conversation I'd have with people. It's very discipline specific.
It it can get very, I could imagine from my own experience, and I've seen it,
Yeah.
getting very muddy in the waters depending on the company that you're in. Because that IP piece and that trial piece, that is the R&D. And that the difference of that to new product development and capturing the the credit that you can get back from the revenue on your R&D. Like how do you, like, what do you look at when you're trying to help businesses with that?
Oh, great question. So what I'd look at is probably what revenue is going to look at as well, or what other firms out there who work in this space, and some of them do it very well. So, but I'm coming at it from the educational point of view, like that's
Yeah,
my strength. Okay. And what I'm looking at is a couple of things. One of all, that first of all, they have a test called the competent professional test. I spoke about that. Okay, right.
yeah.
Then they have the scientific test, science technology test. Okay, where are you using science or technology? So what that means is, are you using a piece of equipment or are you using a process that can be recorded and replicated? Right, very simply put. Okay, so data, descriptions, photographs, records. Where they kept in a professional manner, not some A4 notebook thrown down the back of the filing cabinet, which often happens. Okay, right, and
Hmm.
that's the lost opportunity, right? And then so that's a scientific, and the idea is to overcome a scientific or technological uncertainty. So if we have a new piece of equipment, right, and I'm not talking about commissioning when you set it in, but when it's up and running and you want to create new products using that equipment, you could be in the realms of R&D, right? So we have expense, we have new equipment, we have science technology, we have professional people doing the trials, okay? And then we also have this kind of idea about, you know, what was the advancement, okay? Now, and this is where people sometimes get lost in the terminology because they have this idea called cutting edge or state of the art, right? Now, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So when I'm a compliance person and I don't know your industry, right? I really am depending on you as the technical R&D person to champion and argue back with me as to why this is R&D. And if you can't verbalize that, you've lost that battle with the assessor, right? Now that could
Mm.
be a friendly assessor or that could be a revenue technical assessor, right? And you don't want it to be the technical assessor, right? So the best way to front load this is to do what they call a literature review to find out what's been written. Okay, so that's hint number one. So what happens in books is not always what happens in the real world. Okay. Number two, nobody publishes their intellectual property. No business. Coca-Cola certainly doesn't. Okay, and no other company gives out their secret formulas into the public domain. Right. So that's IP. It has to be generated a certain way. So you have to go through that process to do it. So all this stuff is around, the bubble of R&D, and it's really important to just take a step back from it as we're trying to capture this, right? So as you get all these pieces of the puzzle together, advancement can also be a failure, right? So we know that will never work. We're never going to do that ever again. So when people think about advancement, think about positive progression, but advancement could be an absolute disaster once it's done in good faith and you've learned something from it. So businesses need to learn if they want to go down this route, and I strongly recommend they do. They need to understand that celebrating the losses needs to celebrating the errors, okay, rather than mistakes, celebrating the errors needs to be almost celebrated, okay, and it needs to be highlighted. Okay, we learned this, therefore this happened, and as a consequence, we're not going to do this ever again. And here's the scientific reason for it. And you can start building those into sentences and reports. That's when you have the hallmarks of R&D and technical writing, and that's when it really opens up other opportunities for you. Because human nature is you're really busy. You send a quick memo out to everybody, and I'm going to be very blunt here. The trial was crap, absolute disaster, not didn't work, right? And in a busy environment, that can happen. But sure, there's no science or technology in that statement, right? And I've seen this, right? And then no matter how good that qualification that person is, they might have just been frustrated that day. You've got to get them to get into this methodical way of reporting, and by priming the pump, so to speak, giving them key phrases, it makes it so much easier for people to do that. And that's one of the key challenges. Hopefully that's answered the question for you, Margaret. I'm just going to get me tea here. Is
Yeah,
that
no,
okay?
it's no, that there's a lot in that.
Yeah,
And I suppose what I have found over the years, like I suppose when I was working in Kerry, yes, all of that, like a large corporate business has the capability and they have the skill sets of the people. And sometimes I'll be honest, I used to find it as a buyer very, oh, jeez, the regulatory people, they just, oh, if it doesn't state this and it doesn't state that. We used to get ourselves into a bit of trouble because if we didn't go into that step, that step,
yeah,
that step, you know, and these, there is a job to do. And people that are writing the documents, because you're talking of huge risk
yeah,
if this is not done correctly. But when I see smaller businesses, then like the skill set that you're talking about there, it's not there. Like, I mean, it is just not there. And I'm thinking to myself, it's probably a huge concern for many businesses.
yeah,
I see a lot now that where there's um, a lot of people not protecting their IP, an awful lot of people, where I'm nearly going, like, have you spoke to a lawyer? Have you spoke to someone about this? And they wouldn't even, it doesn't even occur. But this
yeah,
is the trial and error of that is time consuming. You have to budget for it. And sometimes it goes out of scope altogether and may not ever work. But what you said there about, even though it might not work, you can't just say, well, that didn't work. You have to get the learnings from it. It's like a learning log at the end of each
yeah,
project. Um, and I suppose if you're not constantly innovating, then you're not going to be in business. But coming from the commercial side of it, and that's what we focus on in the trade support here is R&D and its commercial feasibility. How how can we how can we ensure, well, we can't really ensure, I suppose, but how can we give it our best guess that something in research and development could possibly be successful and have that commercial feasibility piece of it attached?
How can
It's
you? So, are you asking me how can we minimize errors and cost overruns in projects, or is it something else?
yeah, like I mean, yeah, I suppose it, you know, a lot of creative people get something into their head and then
Mm,
it has to be trialed, tested. And some I've come across even, that would be starting on something and I would immediately know that's not going to work commercially. That's not going to sell,
yeah,
right? But this person or these people are convinced, this business is convinced this is the way it's going to go. But I'm on the fence here. I'm thinking, oh, the money, oh, the money this is going to cost. From you at the other end of the house here, how
mm,
would you advise a business to do it in the most cost effective way they can? Or if you probably see a lot of things coming to you going, don't know about that, don't know about that, lads,
yeah,
or you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
and I mean, you probably see it a lot of the time. I see it a lot of the time. And an outsider can to take an unbiased view.
Yeah.
Um, but it's costly. This work is costly, I
Oh,
suppose.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And sometimes there is a time to put an idea to bed with a shovel, as they say, and just
I
accept,
know, yeah,
right?
yeah, it
Yeah,
is. That's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Um,
loved I loved the way you said that. Yeah, like I mean, I'd love to be as blunt as that now. That's a very good way to put people put
yeah.
people off.
Um, I suppose, look, first of all, right, it's just to bring people back, right, because this is meant to be a service to people, right? So it's
Yeah,
about everybody we can help here today, right? For first part of
yeah,
call is somebody could drop me a line and go, look, have you seen anything like this before? I can give them a steer as an academic, right?
yeah,
And informally, and I've done that, and people can check out my testimonials on LinkedIn. And as I said, it's to be a service to people. So that's the first thing I could do, right? I can't share academic information with anybody by nature of the databases, but I can give people insights based on my own personal research, okay?
yeah,
And very, very high level kind of stuff. I also I'm always interconnecting and joining up people, right? Okay, because there's a principle called, and it's called Metcalfe's law, and it's basically the power of your network doubles every time you add one extra thing onto your network. Okay, so every time you know
wow.
somebody else, your network actually
That's
doubles.
powerful. Say that again. That's powerful.
Metcalfe's law, it's in telecommunications. So every time you add another mobile phone device or a
Wow.
transistor onto a computer, your network actually doubles, right? In capacity,
Wow.
right? So, like it's a very interesting principle, and it applies kind of in the real world as well. So you're only probably, that 6 degrees of separation kind of scenario.
Oh yeah.
Like, so
Yeah.
when you actually help people and you connect people and you say, look, I have somebody here, would you just jump on a call with them and give them a steer for 5, 10 minutes? Don't get precious about your ideas. Speak to people, right? Is critical. Nobody, I hate to say this, I have yet, and no, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you know this, Margaret, but no, I've to date yet to hear of anybody who's stolen anybody else's idea, right? In relation to business. I haven't. I personally haven't.
Yeah.
Maybe you do and you can't name them, that's fine. But people can be very fearsome and fearful about sharing an idea to understand if it's possible, right? And everybody's
Yeah.
so busy in their day to day. Most product developers have a list of products they need to launch, like as big as your arm, right? And probably 100 products in the pipeline. They might hear another great idea and go, "That's fantastic," but they're not going to do anything with it. Do you know what I'm saying to you? So, like, I wouldn't be fearful, especially in Ireland. It's a very small country. It's great size for prototyping, getting a bit of initial feedback. Everybody has to export over to the UK and mainland Europe anyway over here. So we're all sort of in the same boat, right? Our competition as such isn't what's happening on this island, that's what's happening across the water. So people are generally quite amenable to helping. So, like reaching out, getting that initial bit of feedback, and just being upfront with people, like, and trying to map out what the process is going to look like 1, 2, 3 years from now. Your product might work in the short term, but the next step you're going to need to do is find a partner company who's going to be able to produce it, be in mainland Ireland, UK, or EU, right?
Yeah.
And ask yourself the tough questions. What happens if this idea goes gangbusters? Are you ready for that? Like, are you actually ready if this goes through the roof like you're hoping it will?
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
and
I like that's a huge one. I see that every day, and people are just like, they're going out looking for business, and I go, but if you got this business, are you
you've
able
frozen on me
to
there.
produce
Yeah.
this? Like, and they'd be, oh, jeez, maybe.
No, you're grand. You're back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So am I back?
No, you are. Yeah.
They,
Gotcha.
they, they, they see the, they see the sale or the business development, but then it's the operational scale. Like, and as you say, if you're going out and finding a third party manufacturer, that's big work. Like, it's a big
Yeah.
piece of work. So a lot of companies where they're just not ready for that level of scale when that idea develops, when it's
Yeah.
successful, you
Yeah.
know, it's scary. Like
Yeah.
it is, I suppose it's taking things cautiously, I often say, I mean, do your market research because that saves an awful lot of time and money on stuff as well. But the thing is, slowly but surely, because everyone wants a piece of something that's
Yes.
a new technology or a new product or a new innovation. Um, and you have to be very careful because if you can't deliver out the other side, that customer will never come back. And
Yeah.
that's the one thing that is, it's a worry if you can't scale up in time for that. Um, we see it a lot. We see it a lot in probably in a lot in the retail trade, really, of a lot of food producers that do a lot of, and it would be part, I suppose, of any retail deal that you do, or supporting your supply, your partner, your trade partner, is innovating for them and helping them along the way to grow their own business as well as grow your own. How would you advise businesses to do that in the most cost effective way possible? Because R&D is, it's a cost. It's a cost, and it's a large cost for a small business. Um, and maybe sometimes when people are negotiating prices, that you can't just put, you can't just say to the customer, well, my R&D was so much and the development of this was so much. They'll expect that as part of doing
Mm,
business with you.
yeah.
How would you advise around those, even those conversations, or how businesses, or is it just, look, is it just we take it on the chin and we say that's part of doing business? That is just part of doing business. Innovation is just part of doing
Yeah.
business.
There's a couple of different aspects to this, and I don't want to start to talk out of turn, right? So,
Yeah.
um, like I don't want to sort of compromise anybody I'm working with, but basically, up to a point, if you're innovating, okay, if you're doing something new, right, and you want to continue doing it, or you want to open up new markets, or you want to have that secret sauce, you will be doing R&D in some shape or form. But not all
Mm,
innovation is R&D. Okay, so that's just sort of, like, just to kind of be mindful about that. Like, innovation could be a new type of packaging, a new type of marketing, a breakthrough. Whereas R&D, as I said before, is the data, the science. If I left tomorrow, could I give you a book that says this is how you do it? You mightn't have all the knowledge, but you might have the recipe and how to turn the dials between 1 and 20. Okay. And every step
mm,
in my production line. That's the research and development, but it's not the tacit knowledge on how to do something, right? And how to launch the product, which is probably in the bigger bucket of innovation. Businesses that want to open up new markets are going to be doing R&D, right? Okay. And it's very hard to say, oh yeah, well, you see all these disasters that we had here and the one breakthrough product, you know, we've made our money back, right? On all that R&D.
yeah.
It's very hard to ask somebody to front load that cost, especially if they're looking at other suppliers. And if you pitch that wrong in a negotiation, you've lost. Okay, right? That you're trying to come in with the best value proposition, probably the best price, if not the best terms. Okay, and you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot either. So the best way that businesses can hedge their activities is to try and, first of all, try and, if you're looking at a portfolio of new launches, to try and roll them all in together under a common theme. There may be opportunities around grant funding for R&D, which we haven't even gotten into yet. Okay, so you have a winter. You might know you have a spring brief and an autumn brief every year with a supplier, or a multiple. Okay, supermarket, for example, right? That these are coming at you year in, year out. You may actually get wind of a brief that's going to come in a couple of months in advance. If you're lucky, you mightn't, but you may. And if that is the case, and you think that you're going to have new capabilities because of this, then I'd be straight away kind of going, okay, we've identified this equipment we need. We may need to hire more staff. There may be worth our while having a talk to your friends and colleagues in the semi-state that people don't always think about, Enterprise Ireland, or even your Leos if you're smaller, But I'm just going to use Enterprise Ireland as an example because they do great stuff. I've worked with them on one or two projects. Like there's funding available there for R&D grants or business expansion and business process improvements. Like, so if you're doing a step up, bringing out new functionality in the business, like just taking a step back from reacting to the supplier brief and asking yourself, well, what new capabilities are we going to have ourselves? What new knowledge are we going to generate from this? And when you get an application in, let's just say it's January the 1st when you get the application in for ease of conversation. Say by April the 1st, right? Or sorry, April the 2nd, because April the 1st is April Fool's Day. By April the 2nd, right?
Yeah.
By April the 2nd, it gets approved, right? By Enterprise Ireland. You can go back to all your expenses allowable back up to January the 1st on the calendar date. So it's retrospective if you get approved. Okay,
Hmm.
right? So it might take time to get it over the line. It might have to be peer reviewed. It goes into competitive round of funding. but it opens up, you know, you asked about reducing costs. This is how you do it. You're doing it anyway. Take a bit of extra time and get the application in. That's tipping away in the background. You might have a couple of emails, one or two meetings, a site visit. That's happening anyway. You've at least opened the door to Enterprise Ireland, who are there to help Irish businesses, right? And we just get caught up in this maelstrom of everything else, and supplier says this, and Brexit, and whatever else is happening. You get approved or you don't, and that's fine. In the meantime, you've all your processes up to date. You've been recording records as if you're going to get the grant, okay? And now you still have an R&D project there that you can claim the money back on, right? So the best way to do this is capture it in real time. If you try and do this retrospectively, it's an additional cost, right? If you're capturing this in real time, it's money for all rope. It's literally you're doing it anyway, but now we're structuring the business activities. There's a couple of tricks that I could get into in a private conversation with somebody about how to do this better. But like it's not very onerous if you do this the right way. But it just takes some
Yeah,
training, a bit of discipline, and it has to be assigned to people. You can't just put it out there in the ether, guys. We're gonna go and launch a new project, new product. Like it actually, you have to have a project team associated with this, and capture it stage by stage. And you need somebody external to check in, right? Because unless you have that validation, there's no accountability during the financial year, and that's a big issue as well. But if you capture this in
yeah,
real time, Margaret, it's money that companies are giving away. And just to try to wrap this up in a bow for people, I often say to people, my services are for free, but if you don't use me, there's a cost, because there's companies out there that are hemorrhaging money, and they just go, "Oh my God, you're telling me you could have claimed for this, and this," and I'm like, "Yeah, probably." And they don't realize until they have that conversation. I don't give a hoot if you work with me or not, right? Because I'm busy. Well, I'd like you to work with me, but I'd rather you don't go out of business, because we all want to wear the green jersey. We all want to help Irish companies. I want a successful bakery industry. I want loads of people to be attracted to the food industry because it's my profession. We all want to help, but it could be just a conversation just to unlock that bit of knowledge for you that you touched on at the start, Margaret. It's just all about having those conversations. It really is that simple,
it,
and
it is. And I think what you've put back on my question there, which is really, really good, is the accountability internally
yeah.
for the capture of the information, like the actual funding of the project. Because everywhere I'm going, people say, "Oh, we can get training for this and that, but we need money. We need money." This is what people are saying to
Mm,
me. And by even having a conversation with someone and saying, "Oh God, you could claim for that and you could claim for that," a lot of people don't know what grants they can actually
yeah.
get, you know?
Okay.
So could you give us just a bit of just a quick synopsis of what actual grants could be available? So
Oh,
for
yeah,
even for small, like so for say for small and medium size businesses, like
sure.
what what do you think?
There's several, right? And there's a couple of key things to be mind. Most of these are actually going to be on, like I start with the Leos, right? Okay. Most of this stuff is quite transparent. It involves talking to your development advisor or your local Leo, liaison, right? It can depend on where you are jurisdictionally as to what the local priorities are. Okay. It could be employment, it could be aligned with tourism development. If you want to get a quick handle on this really quick, what you need to do is you need to read the county council reports on what the structural funding objectives are for the next couple of years, right? That's the inside
Very
track
good.
in this, folks. You reflect that back in the application, and it's very hard to reject the county council's own recommendations for development of capabilities, right? There's feasibility grants. We all kind of know about these. There are opportunities about micro. There's R&D for micro, for example. There's Udros and the Gaelic, there's Udra. Sorry, my pronunciation is terrible, right? But there's a
The girl to that.
the
Yeah.
Gael, yeah, okay, right. There's the Gael Talk
That's-
funding as well, okay. So if you're a business in there, yeah, Pat on there from Fulham there recently, like he'd be in that kind of area as well.
Oh, the
So
girl took, yeah, yeah.
yeah, but like, and geographically at least, so but there'll be a lot of there'll be a lot of startup funds available. Now it might be more about sort of, there's also innovation vouchers and stuff like that, that you could get a concept prototyped. I'm currently working with a business right now. We're actually developing a concept in classes as part of our assessments for students. It's a learning experience for the guys and girls. So, there's funding for R&D, there's funding for feasibility. There's, it's often match funded. So whatever you put in, you're going to get a
Mhm.
50% funding on. You need to spend a Wonga, obviously, to get it back. In some cases, you may get some advancement on it as well, if you can prove market need and that there is something new out there. And the secret sauce around all this is don't be a Me Too product. Don't be a Me Too service. Yeah, they have this idea called dead weight, which doesn't mean that people are dead weight, but it just means if the grant displaces the local market. So if I say, for example, I'm going to use an example because it's really out of our normal discipline, but it just explains it really well. Um, if you have 6 hairdressers in an area, right, and you want to open up hairdressing salon number 7, you're not going to get a grant for hairdressing salon number 7 because it unfairly gives you an advantage over the 6 existing employers in the area, right?
Yeah.
So if you're coming out with a new food product or something new, you need to get crystal clear on why this is your secret sauce and why it's going to open up new capabilities or new market opportunities in the area. Or the other magic term is be a force for good multiplier, right? So as a consequence of this business happening, I now have a partnership with Joe's Bakery down the road, and we're going to actually get a new truck on the road, and we're going to work together, right? This idea of co-opetition, right? If you can
Oh,
bring
yeah.
that into grant, if you can bring that into a grant application, you're no longer a Me Too. You're kind of looked at a bit more favorably. Now, there's loads of other things in here as well, but the most important thing is talk to your development advisor or your advisor, because they're going to probably tell you what they're. If you ask them straight, what are your KPIs? What are you actually looking to get behind? And you get a straight answer out of them, in most cases, or you might bamboozle them because they haven't heard this before. But it's actually just to actually say, look, how can I align with who and what you want to give money to, right? And sometimes it's just a bit of rephrasing. You're not embellishing the facts. It's actually just presenting the offer in a way that's meaningful to the local resource provider, and that's monumental because everybody's so passionate. We're so close. Wait till you taste this. You're coming in with samples, taste that. That's beautiful. But you've kind of forgotten about the other person's KPIs, you know, and that is
Yeah,
actually to tick
and
their boxes.
it is, and it has to be written in a way where, um, and that's something that the leader actually, something that, when you're getting leader funding,
Yes, the other one.
it can,
Sorry.
it has to be
Yeah,
really, because I'm involved with Dublin Leader, and when we evaluate, we have to look at that. It's not like it has to have a secret sauce, or it has to have something good,
yeah,
different. You won't get for the seventh hairdresser. You won't
yeah,
get it. And I think understanding that, and understanding how to write the brief. And as I always say, when you're writing a tender, try to know the person who you think is going to be reading that. Try to
yeah,
get to know them in some way, even though you've they have no you have no input on to the final decision. But just getting into the when you're writing something, getting into the mindset of getting an idea who's actually going to read that, and writing to that person, I find, or what they believe in, is very, because they're difficult things to write. They
yeah.
can be very challenging things to write, but important that they're written correctly. So, another one that's coming to the fore these days now, with a lot of R&D on circular products and the
Yes,
consumer's interest in sustainable products. Um, do you think the consumer day in, day out, me, you, going into the supermarket buying things, do you think they're interested in the process of the R&D process of that circular product? Or is the consumer, because I see it a lot now, and there is an awful lot of new processes
mm,
required to extract, say, a byproduct and make another product out of it. It is complete R&D,
yeah,
and stuff that's never been done before is going to need to be done. And we're going to see this come more and more. But how important do you think it is to the consumer that's going in doing their shopping?
yeah.
No?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in that, right? So even first of all, and just really quick, like sustainability is a term that's everywhere, but nobody really knows what it means. Okay, it's been overused,
Yeah, it
and
is.
just really quick, just back to the idea, if you're putting something about sustainability into an application, call out specifically for the purposes of this grant, sustainability refers to X quantifiable benefit, one, two, three, meaning that. And you have to spell it out for people because everybody's busy. It's like
Mm.
whitewash, we just put a bit here and put a bit here. The place looks great, everything's sustainable, and it's lost its meaning. Okay. That's the first thing. In relation to, how do we become more important to consumers? I don't actually know if we need to be. And that sounds controversial because I'm really passionate about the industry. Like
Yeah.
banking is important, insurance is important. I don't want to know the nuts and bolts of how banks operate and insurance companies. I just want the product. I want the benefit. I'm busy. My wife is busy. We've got a family here. But if you can make me feel good about the purchase, okay, if you can make me feel that this is aligned with my values, now you've got my interest, okay? Because now especially in times where there's a discretionary spend, I hate the term cost of living because I actually think it's a cost of bad governmental decisions, but that's another thing altogether.
Yeah.
Like we need to call it what it is, okay?
We'll have a change very soon now.
Yeah,
We'll have a change very
yeah,
soon. So
yeah. So I think cost of living
that's
is
going to be exciting.
yeah, cost of living is another one I've
Mm.
issues with. But anyway, I'll keep off my high horse. But the key thing is that we need to be very careful about the terminology we use and how we engage with people, right? So
Yeah.
people are busy. Make them feel that they're going to be more discerning about their purchases, right? It's very easy to do, to give people more information. Okay, simple example. I think it's Kyo's that they have the Spud Nab and the packet of crisps to tell you where crisps were picked, who made them that day, and they tell you a little bit about Kyo's, okay? Very simple. Really, they've been doing it a while. I commend them for that, okay? Another company that does stuff that gives the consumer information, that's on the understanding they want them, is a company called Downstream Beer, and they have a QR code in their
Mm.
beer can, and you zap the beer can, and you can learn about how the beer was made on that day. That's if you're interested, right? Because people are busy. They don't want more noise in their life. They want simplicity. They want elegance. They want stuff to work. They're nearly overwhelmed, right? We don't need more messages, but we want to feel good and kind of comfy with what we're buying, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, that sort of relationship with the customer. We need to kind of get back to this is what we're about. This is our value. When you buy our product, this is a video of the team, and you might have it up on the website or something like that, and somebody might say that you push it out in social when you're buying this product, and it's back to the buy Irish, the brand Irish, we're the green journey. This is what you're facilitating. You're facilitating the next generation of the Irish food industry. You're helping, manufacturing capabilities in this country. It isn't food. I firmly believe this. It's like the fourth emergency service. Like we kept going through COVID, and we didn't get stopped on the roads. We had to keep on producing what we needed, and people have a realization for that. But familiarity breeds contempt, if you get me, that we're
Yeah,
eating
it
all the
does.
time, and it sometimes takes the science away from a bit as well. So it kind of seems like I'm taking away from what I said earlier, but I'm not. The consumer wants to know the product is safe, it's fit for purpose, and they are aligned with your values. And you just get clarity in your messaging. I think that's so important. And that hasn't
Yeah.
always happened in the past because it's a Me Too product. It's look at us over here. We're doing this, this, and this. It's just about being congruent with what your actual audience wants, and what somebody's buying a slice of Brennan's might want is a very different to a pan of Brennan's might want to somebody's buying a protein bar. And I just think it's and that and how are they going to age as a demographic over the next 3 to 5 years? Has that been planned actually into the communications? With your marketing strategy, like it's a big one, but
It
it's
is a big one because I think I read somewhere yesterday that the level of the birth rate is down a good bit in
yeah,
2022. And do we consider these things when we're delivering a message,
yeah,
and that's what, it's something where I think the pandemic taught us a lot, and it probably, as a consumer myself, probably thought, God, working in food, people always have to eat. But there's an awful lot more than I think we're just this industry that has to keep going no matter what,
yeah,
because people always have to eat. And as you went back to an earlier point about burnout, I mean, I have a real concern about people in this industry who, because the nature of it, like it's constant going.
yeah.
Like if you don't mind yourself in it, you can possibly hit burnout. And
Mhm.
that's where the network of people, that's where I find, and that's where I'm coming on to now, is the network of people and the support that people don't feel on their own. through this, that there is help out there, like, and like even this chat we're having, the amount of information that you're giving there is invaluable to the audience. I mean, but somebody could be sitting in their own business, worried to death about things that you're
Yeah,
just talking about here freely, So I think that bit of connection, community, and network is crucial because it's a tough graft. And I know when I was in it myself in employment, I never lifted my head. I was too busy,
yeah,
you know, either like, you know, doing the day job, coming home, rearing kids, going back in the following morning. I didn't have time to even, you know, talk to people about, you know, how hard things might have been. And that was even working for someone else, So I think opening up that conversation and people meeting each other, and that, there might be someone you're sitting beside at a networking event, might just know someone, or, as you said, like you've connected me with quite a few people, and it's through your own connections. And I think, it's great to have that person to bounce off of, like even it's a critical thing. And I think you do a lot of business that way.
yeah. It keeps me sharp as well, Margaret, to be honest with you. I don't want to be not that they are, okay, but I certainly in my mind's eye never want to be, the fuddy-duddy academic who you can't reach out to. I want to be sort of personal and learn
There's
what's
no
going
harm,
on.
there's no
Yeah,
fear you're
yeah,
that. There's no
yeah.
fear
But
you're
but
that young.
learn what's going on the cold face, because
Mm.
it's absolutely
Yeah,
fascinating to me, and I
yeah.
suppose like, and I can just share this idea just really quick is that and you touched on it, right? But I want to just call this out because sometimes if you're depending on the person next to you, right, to tell you what the next big thing is, first of all, they might know. And second of all, your business environment that's around you, it's nearly like if you can share this idea with people, it's nearly like, you lay an egg, right? And there's a gestation period, right? What you're seeing is a consequence of everything that's happened up until now, right? It's not an accurate reflection of current market conditions, right? So you always need to be looking at the new technological breakthrough to relieve that pressure that you just spoke about. Okay, like because if we keep on doing what Billy and Jack and Mary are going to do, we're going to get the same results. So you have to be inquisitive and fascinated about your industry, right? And that means having the chats. And the gold dust is in between the cracks with people over a cup of coffee, going, "Geez, I didn't even know that existed," or whatever. Like, and if I can just share this real quick, because I want to get these plugs in, and it's not for me, it's just for three companies, if I can, right? Because I'm dealing
You
with
can,
three
of
companies
course,
right
yeah.
now. They're game changers, right? One of them is a clean air technology company that's massively extended the shelf life of fresh food. Okay, right. So if it's just a high moisture, fruits, vegetables, meats, etc., massively extends the shelf life above and beyond refrigeration. Okay, so there's a massive play for the retail sector there in relation to energy efficiencies, for example, right? Another one of the company is a series of devices that are infrared that you can zap products and assess the protein content or the nutritional quality, nutritional shelf life of products. So again, I can tell you how long my container of fresh food is going to last, or I can tell you the protein content of milk, and I don't need a lab anymore to
Yeah.
do this. Massive, right? So now businesses could save money on a technical team, and you still have the same people, but now you have more resources to open up other parts of the industry. And the other company, as I touched on at the start, just very quickly, is looking at spent grains and brewing, spent grains and from the brewing distilling industry, and it's bringing those back from animal feed into the food value chain, right, and creating protein sources. So this is all stuff that up until a few years ago wasn't even on people's radar, right? So this
No.
progression is actually what's going to open up the capability of the food industry to hit that 50% target that everybody keeps on rabbiting on about, that we need to massively increase our food production. We just need to cut out waste. There's a lot of waste in the food industry that people don't want to talk about, or inefficiencies is probably a nicer, better way to say it. And there are three
Yeah.
technologies right there that could be game changers. And in an industry that's dealing with margins, getting those margins right and a sliver of a percent or 2% is massive when you have large overheads. So there's loads of opportunities. But if you keep
Oh,
on doing stuff as everybody else has, you won't see them. You
there
really
is. And like I was reading an article yesterday about food fraud. And this is where something that technology piece of knowing what percentage
Yep.
of, because the cost of like from the cost of raw materials is, if the spec isn't the spec that if you have a certain percentage of oil and mayonnaise or
Yeah,
whatever, how do you know that that's not falsified? And I believe the technology behind what you're saying there, that is a huge piece for businesses
massive.
because you send something away to a lab because you have a suspicion about something.
Mm,
um, and like me now as a buyer, if I don't get what I pay for, I get very, like the height of suspicion could come to me. That don't taste the same. I'm not sure about that.
mm,
But to the eye, you can't see. You send that away to a lab. Sure, it takes ages for it to come back and the cost of it. What you're talking about here is cutting edge. That's
yeah,
cutting edge, like, for anyone that, like, food fraud is still a problem when you're talking about like cost of commodities. Um,
yes.
and it needs to be really considered in the process of R&D and in the process of procurement for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so where can people get a hold of you, Darren, if they want to have a chat with you or a consultation?
Okay, well, in the first instance, right, I'm a lecturer in TU Dublin, right? So if they want
Mm,
to just kind of reach out for a chat, right, reach out to me. First of all, LinkedIn is probably the best way to catch me. If you're
okay.
in the food industry or involved in technology associated with the food industry, I'll connect with you straight away. If you're trying to sell me something in relation to marketing software, I probably won't, so forgive me, right? But basically, that LinkedIn is the first best port to call. If I can help you professionally, in a non-commercial way, absolutely delighted to do that through my university outreach role. Okay. If you want to look at R&D or grant funding or reformulation, like actually how to redesign a product and make it work better, faster, cheaper, you can reach me at darren@unitedplates.ie. Yeah, as well. So, and apart from that, guys, I'm sometimes at speaking events and stuff like that, like this, and really appreciate the opportunity to share this because the food industry kind of needs
It
connectors, and I
does,
know you're
and like
doing it as well.
yeah,
So I know you believe this.
yeah, and I believe there isn't enough. I suppose, from my own experience, it's very hard to get people out of their day to day, to even give them snippets of information like this. And, just having something that you can listen to. The podcasts, we're now gone live on Spotify and we're on YouTube as well. So we're delighted with that. And we're planning for the next trade forum from next March. So it's been, I suppose because, look, there's a purpose behind it
Yeah,
because, in the day to day myself for over 20 years and just couldn't get out beyond the fog. And because there's so many people that have information that, through a network you'll get quite freely and learn yourself, as you said, like keeping yourself sharp. Like
yeah.
I find that's critical for me. I mean, the amount I've learned from you here now talking to in the space of an hour is unbelievable. And I thank you for that because you're a mind of information, Darren. Mind of information. It,
Thanks very much, Margaret, and
yeah.
that's a compliment come from you because I know your onions as well. So you know,
Onions, literally.
onions.
Did my
Yeah,
days of buying out of Holland. I
yeah.
do, yeah. So lovely to speak to you, Darren. It's absolutely been a complete pleasure, and I wish you well. And anyway, we're always in contact.
Yes.
I leave Darren's email details on the bottom of this recording if anyone wants to get in touch with Darren. Um, so thank you, Darren, and I wish you a
You're
lovely
very
day.
welcome.
Thank you,
Thanks very
everyone,
much,
for
Margaret.
tuning.
Okay. Have a great
Bye, bye,
weekend. Take care.
bye, bye, bye,
Bye
bye.
bye.